Jasodanandana Pratachanaranjana Jamunatiravanachari Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunatiravanachari Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotarita Srimad Abhay Charanarvindam Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kuri Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Iskan Bibiti Samstabhakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Navadvitāṁ Ki Jai Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Shrimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shrimati Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagna Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I can understand it's really important to end the class on time because I got a clock here and there's a clock there. Yes, the devotees all have important services to do, so they have to start their day. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, entitled Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Text number 20. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Yatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Ladies. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Dodhūyati nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike nirabhidyetāṁ. Nabhasvati. Tatra vāyur gandha-vaho. Ghrāṇo nasi jighṛkṣataḥ. Nāsike in the nostrils. Nirabhidyetāṁ, being developed. Dodhūyati, rapidly blowing. Nabhasvati, air respiration. Tatra, thereupon. Vāyuḥ, air. Gandha-vaho, smelling odor. Ghrāṇaḥ, sense of smell. Nasi, in the nose. Jighṛkṣataḥ, desiring to smell odors. Therefore, when the Supreme Puruṣa desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated. The nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air, carrying smell, also became manifested. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The nasal instrument, odor, and the controlling deity, air, smelling, etc., all became manifested simultaneously when the Lord desired to smell. The Vedic mantras confirm this statement in the Upaniṣads. Statement that everything is first desired by the Supreme before the subordinate living entities can act upon it. The living entity can see only when the Lord sees. The living entity can smell when the Lord smells, and so on. The idea is that the living entity cannot do anything independently. He can simply think of doing something independently, but he cannot act independently. The independence in thinking is there by the grace of the Lord, but the thinking can be given shape by the grace of the Lord, and therefore the common saying is that man proposes and God disposes. The whole explanation is on the subject of the absolute dependence of the living entities and the absolute independence of the Supreme Lord. Less intelligent persons, claiming to be on an equal level with God, must first prove themselves to be absolute and independent, and then they must substantiate their claim by being one with God. Om Ajnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhangum Langayate Gare Yat Kripa Taraham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramanandamaravam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram. So, this part of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. People wonder how the world came into being, how everything is maintained, how it's existing. So Bhagavatam gives the answer. And here we see the universal supreme person, supreme puruṣa, desire to smell, and therefore odors came, the instrument to smell odors came, the respiratory system came. All these things came into existence. The deity that controls air, which carries smells, all became manifested when the Lord desired. The main principle here is the living entities have a material body with senses, but they're not independent of the Supreme Lord. They're actually completely dependent on the Lord. This is the message that this chapter of Bhagavatam is trying to give us and is giving us. The living entity, Srila Prabhupada clearly mentions here in this purport, can only think about being independent. The idea that the living entity will work in a certain way with the senses and produce a certain thing and get some result from that work and enjoy that work, this is all with the idea of being independent of the Lord. So here Prabhupada's explaining that you can think like that, the living entity can think like that, but it's actually not a fact. The fact of the matter is the living entity is dependent on the Lord. The body doesn't belong to the living entity. It's come from the material elements. As the skribhumir apo nalo vāyuḥ kammano buddheva cha, the gross material elements, the subtle elements. And one by one it's being described here how the different senses are manifest, like smell. So the living entity is not in control of these things. It's controlled by these things. Smell, very important thing. We take it for granted, but smell is a very important sense. Smell can alert us to danger, right? Just like LPG gas. In LPG gas, or what they call in the United States natural gas, it's odorless. It has no smell, right? But it's a very dangerous substance. If you breathe too much of it, it's a poison, you can die. So what do? They add a smell, a unique kind of smell to LPG and natural gas, right? So that when you smell that, you become alert. There's danger here, isn't it? Danger, right? So smell can save us from danger. Actually, Indra Prabhu, he lost his sense of smell. And there was a leak in his cylinder. When he lit a match, there was a flash, and all of the oxygen got sucked out of the room, and in that way he suffocated. Right? But if his sense of smell was working, he immediately would have been alerted, oh, there's a problem here. Right? So smell affects us in many different ways. Smell. The smell from a man's body, this is scientifically researched, okay? Studies have been done. The smell from a man's body, perspiration, odor, like that. When a woman smells that, they become very peaceful. There's a hormone that's triggered in a woman's body that she becomes shanti, Women can get in a lot of anxiety sometimes, so Krishna has made a mechanism for them. So see how important smell is? Right? We don't think about it. We kind of take it for granted, right? Smell. Another thing that's been scientifically researched about smell, and this is a very new research, is that, as we grow older, the brain degenerates. And one of the first things to go is the short-term memory, right? And the loss of short-term memory is is a risk factor or an indicator for some more serious diseases called Alzheimer's and dementia. So what they researched and found out was that if you smell menthol, menthol is like peppermint or something similar to that, that it can regenerate the brain so that the loss of the short-term memory can be regained. Your short-term memory can be regained. That's an important factor. Just see how important the sense of smell is, right? By smelling, you can regenerate things inside the brain. So smell, it's coming from Krishna. We regularly smell flowers that are offered to Krishna, and in that way we engage in devotional service to Krishna. In the morning they offer what they call the attar, the scented oil to the Lord, and then after that artik they go around and distribute it to the devotees, and everybody's smelling there like that. Right? So there's a pleasure in smells that all comes from Krishna. There are also bad smells that alert us to keep away from that area, right? That not healthy. So the Lord has perfectly arranged everything in this world, right, for the living entities to come here and use it in one of two ways. Now the first way is that the living entity can come here and try to enjoy in this world, using the senses to engage with the sense objects, and imagine that he's an independent enjoyer, an independent enjoyer. But that's not actually the fact. The living entity is not meant to be the enjoyer. This material world is put here by the Supreme Lord for those who want to try and come and be the enjoyer. But we're not really the enjoyer. We're meant to be enjoyed. And that means that we cooperate with the real enjoyer, the real puruṣa, the supreme puruṣa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because living entities have this desire, I think yesterday's class, P.T. Vardhan Maharaj mentioned that like a father, the kid really wants, a certain thing, and the father doesn't think it's good for him, and he says, no, right? But he says, no, I want it. Kids are like that, right? I gotta have it, right? Prabhupada even tells a story about when he was a child, and his father bought him a pistol. And I guess Western cultures everywhere, pistols. And he bought him one, and then Prabhupada said, well, I have two hands, I need another pistol, right? So kids are like that, they gotta have something, they gotta have it. So the father relents, okay, take it, right? So coming to the material world, it's our doing. We want to try to enjoy here, and Krishna is so kind, okay, you go ahead and try. So that's one reason. The other reason this material world is here is so that the living entity can, through knowledge, through understanding, realize that I'm not meant to be the enjoyer. I'm not meant to be here to try to compete with the supreme enjoyer. Right? The devotees of the Lord, at that point, they take up the process of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, the 9 processes of devotional service, so that they can become purified and learn how to cooperate with the enjoyment of the Lord as His servant. Others, through knowledge, can understand that there's not really enjoyment here, but it's a place of suffering. But they also get entrapped by Maya by thinking that they are equal to the Lord. And Prabhupada hints at that in this purport, right? That they've become God. And Prabhupada describes them as less intelligent persons. They have some knowledge, but they have the wrong conclusion that they become equal with God. So they're not equal with God, at least in quantity. God is so great. Right? Like when Krishna manifested his pastimes in this material world, he lifted Govardhan Hill, right? He had 16,000 wives. But these less intelligent persons, they relegate those pastimes of the Lord, which are wondrous, wonderful. They attract the minds of the devotees. But to the less intelligent, they say that's all mythology. It's just a legend to give you some ethical and moral lesson. But the devotees of the Lord, they abhor this mentality. And therefore, Prabhupada mentions such persons as less intelligent. They're trying to be on the same level of God without having any of the qualities of God or the powers of God. God has so many different energies. Parasya shaktir vividhaya shruyate. And He manifests those in wonderful ways. There's the original form of the Lord, the 2-armed form of Krishna, residing in the spiritual world, playing his flute, tending the cows, having various pastimes with his devotees. So Krishna, he expands himself, and his immediate expansion is Lord Balaram. So Balaram, in all intents and purposes, is just like Krishna. Only difference is that Balaram's white and Krishna's a darkish complexion. So from Balaram manifest what's called the Chaturvyuha: Sankarshan, Vasudeva, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. The quadruple expansion. And that from that Sankarshan, of that original quadruple expansion, another expansion comes. And that's referred to as Mahasankarshan, Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. Now from Mahasankarshan manifests the first puruṣa avatar. Their specific incarnation is to deal with the Srishti, the creation. So from Mahasankarshan comes Mahavishnu, or Karna-dakashaya Vishnu. And Karna-dakashaya Vishnu lays down on the Karna ocean, and from the pores of his body manifest the different universes, and they're floating on the Karna ocean. Like they're Jagananda, they're anda in the shape of a egg, oval type shape, and they're hollow. Mahavishnu, looking over that, he, his glance, he impregnates this universes, material elements with the living entities. And at the same time, he manifests another incarnation called Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. So Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, he enters into each and every of these egg-shaped universes that are floating on the Karna ocean. And there's so many of these universes. The material scientists can't even manage or imagine the length and breadth of this universe. And it would be beyond their scope to understand that there are just as many universes like one mustard seed in a whole goonie bag of mustard seeds. Right? Goonie. What do they say? I forget English now. What's the goonie? Burlap bag, they say? Yeah, jute bag. So that's a lot of mustard seeds, right? That's a lot of universes that are out there. And Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he enters into each and every one of the universes. And from the pores of his body, water is coming. Right? Srila Prabhupada gives the example that, on a hot day, looks like today's going to be a hot day. If you do a little work, you'll sweat. So water can come from the pores of this body. Why not from the body of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu? We have a little water, he can have a lot of water that fills up half the universe. And it's known as the Garbha Ocean. And he lies down on a bed of Anantasesh. And because of the material desires that the living entities have, it causes a navel, a lotus flower from his navel to protrude. And on top of that navel, Lord Brahma, that lotus flower from his navel, Lord Brahma is born. But it doesn't stop there. Garbhodakashayi Vishnu again expands himself as Jighṛkṣataḥ Vishnu and enters into the heart of every living entity, also every atom, Jighṛkṣataḥ Vishnu. So these three incarnations are known as the puruṣa avatars, and they deal with the creation of this material world. One of the things that's described in this chapter is the virata rupa, the universal form, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita. It has thousands of mouths and thousands of faces and thousands of arms. Right? The Lord manifested that form to Arjuna specifically to show in the future that if anyone is claiming to be God, then they should be able to show their universal form. Because Krishna, who claims to be God, mata panantaram nyanyat kintidasti jananjaya. There's no truth superior to me, Krishna says. That means he's God. But he proved it by showing his universal form to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, so that in the future we can separate the imposters from the real Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these so-called Bhagavans, they are not able to even overcome the trials and tribulations of this body. What to speak of manifest the universal form. One time, long time ago, in Pune, one devotee, his name was Akshayananda Maharaj, he used to travel in a bullock cart long before the Padayatra started, and at one point he organized a Rath Yatra in Pune. This is many years ago. At that time there was one famous so-called spiritual personality. His name was Rajneesh. You don't hear about him now, he passed away. Rajneesh. He had a big ashram in Pune, and many foreigners were coming there and living in his ashram. So Akshayananda Maharaj, he was organizing this Rath Yatra, and while he was organizing, you see the people in Maharashtra, at that, it's not like today, there's TV everywhere. I'm talking about 1980, 1979, just after Prabhupada left the planet, 1980. People in Maharashtra, they don't know what the people in Orissa are doing, right? So who's Lord Jagannath, Rath Yatra? No idea. Absolutely no idea. It's not like today. Everywhere's TV. When Rath Yatra is going on, everybody can watch it on TV. It wasn't like that then. You couldn't even make a phone call. You had to book a phone call. If I wanted to call to Orissa, I had to book, wait 2 hours, then the call would come back. Your call has gone through, right? So he was organizing this Rath Yatra, and at that time, the posters were up, Bhagavan Jagannath Rath Yatra, and they used to call this person Bhagavan Rajneesh, Bhagavan Rajneesh. So it came in the newspaper that Rajneesh was in the hospital with a slip disc. Okay? So he was in the hospital with a slip disc, and Akshayananda Maharaj was having this newspaper, press release about Rath Yatra. So the reporters came and they wanted to know, Jagannath, Baladev, what is this? And he was explaining that Jagannath is Bhagavan. He's the Lord of the universe. He was explaining about the glories of Jagannath and what Rath Yatra. And on top of that he said, and this Bhagavan never has a slip disc. So they published that in the newspaper. This Bhagavan never has a slip disc. And actually, it's a fact. People they become so confused. Somebody produces a little magic, right? And they think, oh, Bhagavan. So Srila Prabhupada's books are there to clearly delineate who is actually Bhagavan and who is actually the Supreme Lord that we are meant to surrender to, right? That we were meant to cooperate with in His enjoyment. And in that way we can be satisfied, happy, and peaceful. Other than that, we'll always be in anxiety, will always be difficulties. Just now, there's a war that has started in Israel, right? So thousands of people are killed. Right? In spite of having the United Nations for the last 75 years or so, where is it united? Who's united? Right? Wars are still going on. It's a failure. Until the human society understands this philosophy, that who is God and what is my duty in relationship to the Supreme Lord. People think that God is there is simply meant to supply me with what I want. Oh God, help me pass the test. Help me in my business. Help me find a nice partner for marriage, right? They think that God is simply order supplier. But no. Yes, God supplies everything, but that's not our business to ask God for this and that. God's automatically supplying to the animals. Elephant eats so many kilos every day. God is supplying. So why God won't supply? That's not the business of this human form of life. The Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to bring the living entity in the human form to the perfection of this human form of life, and that is to surrender to the Supreme Lord and render service to the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada started this International Society for Krishna Consciousness for that purpose, to bring as many people as possible, the whole world, to their original consciousness the consciousness of rendering service to Krishna, which of course begins by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So if there are any questions, we can try to answer them, if there's any questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the nice class. Prabhuji, as you were explaining about the Pune Rath Yatra, like that time people were not knowing.
At that time we had no center.
Okay.
There was nothing in Pune. But Prabhupada had visited Pune. He went to one life member's house, Barry Malhotra, and he had lunch in their house. So he had visited Pune. It was a good place for preaching. A lot of pious people lived there.
So I was just thinking that time people were a kind of, we can say that they were not aware of Jagannath. But now because so much internet, TV, everything is there. So what are the factors which is not allowing others to take shelter of Lord? Because as you are also staying in Juhu, so that's called Maya Nagri. So why people are not taking up so seriously Krishna consciousness?
Maya is very strong. People's attachment to Maya is very strong, right? They're convinced, they're more convinced about the idea that they can enjoy in this material world. That's why they're working so hard. They get in the train, or go downtown Bombay, it's so crowded, I can't even get in the train. They get every day, they go in the train. They go downtown, then they take a bus and wait in another line to catch a bus to go to their office. Work hard, the same thing, come back. At night, they risk literally they risk their lives in Bombay for the trains. Every day, so many people die, they're pushed out of the train, on a moving train. Why are they doing this? Because they're convinced that if I work hard enough, I will enjoy. So convinced. So our duty is to convince them of just the opposite. And there's not so many of them that are, first of all, willing to hear. I don't have time. Mere paas time nahi hai. Jao adhar se. Maharaj, time nahi hai. Right? That's the biggest disease in the Kali Yuga. People think they don't have time. So the job of the preacher is a very difficult job. Not an easy thing. To find that person. Manushyanam sahasreshu. Out of millions, so many people, there's that one person. Our business is to go and find those persons who are ready to hear, ready to make a change. They're fed up. They've had enough. They're looking for the real answer about how to become happy in life. So that the preacher has to meet with many obstacles, many difficulties. But they do that because they're attached to the Lord. Right? They're attached to the Lord's devotees. Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, so nicely situated. He only had to pay a few rupees a month for his 2 rooms in Radha Damodar. Few rupees. He could handle it. And part of the deal was that every day he would get 1 plate from the Raj Bhog. No problem. But he left it. He left that. And with just a little money he got on a boat in America. Can you imagine? You know, we don't even go to Calcutta unless we know the room is ready and if I got some place to stay, and nothing in America. But he did that. He did that on the order of his spiritual master, and out of an intense feeling of trying to help people. Trying to help people. That's the mood of the devotee. They're very merciful, very tolerant, to try to help people. Is that okay? Any other points, questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Oh, you want to ask a question? Go ahead. Here's a mic.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. When you met Srila Prabhupada and where?
When I mentioned what?
Srila Prabhupada. You met Srila Prabhupada?
Huh?
Did you meet Srila Prabhupada?
Yeah.
And when and where?
I met Srila Prabhupada right here in Sridhar Mayapur in 1974 during the Gaur Purnima festival. And that will be this coming Gaur Purnima will be 50 years ago, right here. Hare Krishna. Thank you for listening. Srila Prabhupada ki. Why didn't he ask it on the microphone? Are you in the Gurukul? Okay, good.
He enters in the universe. He enters a lot of
No. Listen, he enters the universe, which he lies down on, he makes an ocean, the Garba ocean, he's lying there in Mantaslesh, and then from him manifests jighṛkṣataḥ Vishnu, who goes into the hearts of all the living entities, who's in your heart too. He's your next door neighbor. He's your best friend.
What is mythology?
What's that?